They didn't know who they were taking. In their eyes, this was a simple snatch job on a dusty stretch of road in eastern Syria. Another American face in a war where Americans were rare, valuable, and usually profitable. To them, he was ransom, leverage, maybe a propaganda clip waiting to happen. But that assumption was the first crack in a plan that was never going to survive contact with reality. Because this man wasn't an aid worker, and he wasn't a lost contractor. He was a Delta Force operator. And when you grab someone like that, you're not starting a negotiation. You're lighting a fuse under a machine that exists for one purpose: bringing their people back and erasing anyone who thought they could get away with it. The moment started like 100 others in that war. A convoy that looked almost civilian, 2 beat-up Hilux pickups, a battered van, drivers who blended into the endless traffic of survival. The sun was dropping, throwing long shadows over rubble and rebar, and the road cut through a landscape that had already been chewed up by 6 years of civil war. Inside that van, among a few passengers speaking Arabic and keeping their heads down, sat a man who didn't belong on any official manifest. His clothes were local, his language flawless, his cover layered so deeply that even some people on the same side wouldn't know who he really was. Operational detachment. Delta doesn't travel loud. Their job is to move like ghosts through real places, in real chaos, doing missions that will never be announced. His cover was airtight, but airtight never means invincible. The ambush hit fast, and it hit smart. A blast buried under loose asphalt tore open the road ahead. The driver jerked the wheel, trying to save the van. But by then, the rooftops were alive. Gunfire cracked down from 2 angles. Controlled bursts designed to freeze a vehicle and panic everyone inside. Civilians scattered, the pickups lurched, and within 90 seconds the whole scene was over. The van door was yanked open. 2 men were hauled out hard. One screamed, panicking in the way anyone would when their world collapses in a flash of dust and bullets. The other didn't make a sound. He just looked up at the men around him, locking faces into memory with a calm that didn't fit the moment. His silence wasn't fear, it was a process. And that calm was mistake number 2 for the kidnappers, because you don't want a professional watching you closely while you think you're in control. Delta Force isn't the regular military, and it isn't even the famous special operations units people argue about online. This is the classified edge of U.S. Special Operations Command, shaped from the failures and blood lessons of the 1970s, when international terrorism was exploding and America realized it needed a scalpel, not a hammer. Their operators train for hostage rescues, covert raids, surgical strikes, and missions so sensitive that the government can deny they ever happened. Their names don't show up in press releases. Their casualties don't show up on the evening news. A Delta operator is built through a selection pipeline that filters out almost everyone, then polishes the few survivors into something precise and relentless. Language fluency, resistance training, urban combat, and real-world deployments where hesitation gets people killed. So yes, the man in that roadside ambush was capable of surviving captivity. But more important, his unit was capable of making captivity a short-lived problem for anyone foolish enough to try it. In 2017, Syria was the perfect place for foolishness to thrive. The civil war was already 6 years deep. Assad was clinging to power with Russian and Iranian muscle behind him. ISIS had been pushed back into shrinking strongholds, but its loyalists were still scattered across the map, like landmines waiting for the wrong footstep. American Special Operations Forces were on the ground, working alongside Kurdish fighters, chasing high-value targets, cutting terror networks apart one raid at a time. For civilians, that environment was a maze of checkpoints, shifting front lines, and daily uncertainty. For kidnappers, it was an economy. Militias grabbed people and sold them upward. Cells traded captives for rifles or cash. Every foreigner had a price tag, and every hostage video was a potential career move in the twisted market of war. So, the kidnappers did what wartime predators do. They saw an American, assumed he was soft, assumed the US would play by the old rules, slow negotiations, diplomatic pressure, maybe a quiet exchange if they pushed the right buttons. They imagined money, influence, a bargaining chip. What they didn't understand is that this specific kidnapping didn't enter the normal system. There was no waiting for a government statement, no back-channel appeals, no drawn-out talks where everyone pretends time isn't running out. This went straight to the place in the US machine that doesn't send messages. It sends people. When the ambush report hit American intelligence pipelines, it moved like electricity. Analysts pinned down the location, cross-checked the time window, noted that one of the passengers was unaccounted for. Then the encrypted line that made every other detail irrelevant: possible loss of high-value SRF asset. In less than an hour, a secure phone was ringing in a basement office at Fort Bragg. The voice on the other end didn't ask for a debate or a briefing with slides. It delivered a decision. Task Force Green is moving. And once that switch flips, the entire posture changes. You're no longer gathering information for a policy memo. You're hunting. Inside Delta's operations center, Syria lit up across screens. The questions were sharp and simple. Where did they take him? Who had the muscle to move him? Which roads make sense? Which roads don't? Who nearby might talk if pressured, bribed, or reminded of a past favor? Human intelligence, drone feeds, intercepted calls, regional partners, everything got dragged into a single funnel. Find him before they bury him deeper. Every hour mattered. Every kilometer he traveled raised the risk of crossing a line into territory where recovery becomes messier, slower, or politically explosive. Meanwhile, the operator lived the captivity he had trained for, hooded, wrists bound, shoved into a vehicle under cover of darkness. He didn't fight in the first moments, because fighting there is how you die early. Instead, he listened. He smelled diesel. He felt the tires grind over gravel. He tracked turns by the way his body leaned, measured time by engine rhythm and road texture, the same mental discipline drilled into Delta candidates long before any deployment. He wasn't wondering if they'd come. He was estimating how fast and what shape the room would be in when they arrived. Because that's the other part of the training nobody talks about: patience with teeth. The hunt tightened through the night. Over northern Iraq, a Reaper drone pivoted in black sky, camera locked on 2 trucks leaving the ambush zone. A CIA officer was on the radio to Kurdish commanders offering support in exchange for roadblocks and eyes on every route that mattered. Back at Bragg, gear was already being packed. There wasn't time for a week of rehearsals or a slow intelligence build because the target was moving. Weapons went for close quarters work. Night optics were checked twice. Medkits got stuffed full. Nobody needed to say the mission out loud for everyone to know what was coming. The kidnappers hauled their prize to a safe house, a 2-story cinder block building in a village near the Euphrates. Locals didn't ask questions because in that part of the world, questions can get families erased. But there's a rule insurgents keep learning the hard way. Loyalty isn't free, and fear isn't the only currency in a war zone. Someone in that village owed the Americans, maybe a son pulled from rubble after a strike. Maybe a cousin treated by a military doctor. Maybe a debt that couldn't be repaid with money. Whatever it was, a phone call got made. A whisper traveled, and suddenly the hunters weren't guessing anymore. The green light came without drama. A nod, a timestamp, wheels turning. Under blackout conditions, Delta operators loaded into helicopters lifting from a covert forward location in northern Iraq. Not a predictable base where eyes would already be waiting. They flew low, fast, desert blurring beneath them. Inside the cabin, nobody was cracking jokes. It was that familiar locked-in quiet where every man is running the same mental checklist, and nobody needs to hear it spoken. As they closed on the village, a live drone feed confirmed the building. Thermal signatures showed bodies inside, too cluttered to pick out which was the hostage, but close enough for certainty. The assault element hit the ground and moved straight in. No grand perimeter, no slow crawl. A unit like this goes for the throat because speed is mercy for your guy and terror for everyone else. 2 sentries outside the safe house barely had time to register what was happening before they were down. The door blew. The team flowed inside, suppressors coughing through the dark, night vision turning confusion into clear angles and targets. Upstairs, the captive heard the muted thumps. He knew instantly. The rescue wasn't a surprise to him. It was a clock finally striking the hour he'd been measuring in his head. When his door burst, a weapon light cut across his face for a heartbeat. Then he heard a voice he trusted more than any prayer in that moment. "Flash, you good?" Call sign. Confirmation. He nodded once. Restraints came off. A quick injury check. And a rifle pressed into hands that had never stopped being dangerous. 30 seconds earlier, he was a prisoner. Now, he was part of the assault again. The extraction was fast and brutal. A couple of armed men tried to crash through the rear, met by precise fire that ended the idea quickly. Outside, another element covered the street, while overhead support tracked vehicles approaching from the east. They didn't make it. Controlled cannon fire turned the trucks into wreckage before they could threaten the perimeter. In under 7 minutes, it was done. The helicopters lifted out, swallowed by the night. leaving a village stunned into silence and a lesson written in smoke. Some captives don't lead to negotiations, they lead to consequences. Back at the forward location, the rescued operator walked into debrief still in dusty local clothes. Nothing dramatic in his posture, no speeches, just sharp eyes and a calm that made it feel like this had been another hard day at work. For the men who went in after him, it was a reminder of the rule they live by even when nobody is watching. You don't leave your own behind. And if you're on the other side thinking about kidnapping one of them, understand what that means. You're not taking a man. You're inviting the kind of response that doesn't end with a deal. It ends with a door blowing inward in the middle of the night.